Good morning, everyone. Today we will talk about research methods in education, but begin the discussion with a focus on how we understand the methodology debates, how we understand the nature of educational research by beginning from the beginning. We'll talk about what educational research has modeled itself on for a large percentage of 20th century, the paradigm of science, the framework or thought associated with how science has been able to create tremendous amount of progress over the years has guided this belief that if only one could emulate, if only the social sciences could emulate what scientists did with natural sciences in their quest of understanding the natural order, one could move or make progress, much greater progress in arriving at an understanding of how the social works, how the social world operates. So it's important, we believe, to begin with unpacking this understanding around science, nature of science, how does knowledge advance in science? Are there certain stereotypes or simplifications that have happened in our understanding of how science progresses, thereby are concerned with making sense of what is scientific method? We have a very broad understanding of what method of science is because all of us have studied basic level science up to class 10th, and we have a textbook which tells us what are the steps which help scientists create foolproof knowledge. How do we trust the knowledge which science produces? What are the markers which make it stand out vis-a-vis folk knowledge or vis-a-vis any other form of knowledge? So our concern with engaging with scientific method comes from that place of understanding what is it that an understanding of method associated with the sciences and contribute in our understanding of how the social world operates. And is it justified? So broadly, is there a scientific method? How do we understand it? What are philosophers of science saying about it? How do we transport that understanding to inquiry of the social world? Is that justified? So some of these questions are going to influence our journey and our effort in understanding educational inquiry or nature of educational research. Broadly, the larger objective of engaging with these issues also comes from our belief that science provides a more objective, trustworthy, credible, valid knowledge source. So what are knowledge sources? That becomes an interesting question. What reasons do we have to engage with the nature of knowledge or body of knowledge that science produces and look at it as Plato would call as how is scientific knowledge justify true belief? So is the process of justification coming, how it is justified, is that process of justification to be trusted because it is anchored in a specific kind of a method? Positivist philosophers or thinkers who've been broadly identified with the perspective of positivism kind of make an argument that the specific methods of investigation, which include empirical observation, not just metaphysical speculations, but largely, this aspect of empirical observation, the aspect of the requirement of comparison of conditions, and this impetus that one should be able to experimentally verify your hypotheses or conjectures, and then only through this route you reach the process of theory development. And ultimately, through the theory, your endeavor is to come at a covering law model of explanation, a law-like entity has to be created, which is able to account for most of the natural phenomena. So embryonic positivism or early stages of positivism came from this concern with progress, that how can science and a particular method or a set of methods help you reach that stage of explanation, provide or account for why things happen the way they happen, therefore enable progress of human civilization, right? So three things which we'll talk in a little bit greater detail in the next video then include that contingency on empirical observation. Only those domains which are in the circumference of being observed, of being empirically observed, not just in your ideas or not just in your imagination, but things which render themselves to empirical observation, which allow you to compare conditions, and which can, through which you which you can subject to empirical experimental verification. Only those domains or only those knowledge statements one would fall within the domain of science, but also would be attributed as scientific inquiry. So what the hope with the pursuit of a method of science or a pursuit of what we understand as a scientific method emanated from this kind of a hope or belief that a careful systematic observation and through comparison and experimentation will help us create general laws about nature. And if you extrapolate it to the social world, you would have reasons to believe that, or the thinkers had reasons to believe that if the same set of processes were applied to questions about society, then similarly all that one had to do was undertake careful systematic observation, do comparison and do experimentation, and then reach closer and closer to certain general laws about society. And you come closer to these general laws of society which already exist. All that is left for human beings to do, or for community of scientists to do, or social scientists to do, is to uncover them. They're lying in the nature out there, they're lying in the social out there. All you have to do is uncover the laws. The early stage of positivism or concern with method had a key characteristic, that the primary emphasis was on empirical observation and the nature of what one could properly conclude from it. So the entire focus was that how do you apply the method of science or the scientific method to capture information about the processes or phenomena empirically, and then unpack or figure out what does it imply, what does that nature of observation imply. The effort or the concern with scientific method or scientific reasoning, primarily an obsession with inductivism or inductive logic, but from general instances of a phenomena coming to a universal conclusion or coming to a generalized conclusion. So this concern was also not unfounded. 17th century, 16th century Europe was struggling to expunge all the remnants of metaphysical reasoning as guiding the inquiry process. So metaphysics refers to the system of knowledge that relied upon assumption about the world that were not immediately observable. And if things that are not immediately observable guide or become the dominant paradigm of your inquiry, they can lead to very meaningful reflections or ruminations, but they do not necessarily enable you to come at or arrive at an understanding of cause and effect. Right? So a metaphysical argument that the world has been created by God, such a claim, positivist or early positivist would argue, it amounted to a narrative They called it fiction. It amounted to a narrative that um, performed a very important role in society, that it gave comfort to lots of people, it gave meaning to life, it gave meaning or purpose to the universe. But such a reasoning that uh, the world has been created by, there is a creator for the world, such a reasoning, they argued, was without empirical foundations and therefore unworthy of scientific consideration. It could still be worthwhile as a human endeavor to make sense of the purposes, to make sense of creation in those terms. But when it came to scientific considerations, it did not necessarily provide a breakthrough. It did not necessarily lead you to a closer understanding of the question of how and what. Right? In the similar alignment with when it comes to social theorists or thinkers concerned about nature of social reality, positivist kind of wanted to understand, like, what is the larger goal, what is the larger more than the goal, what is the larger mechanism through which society has come to be, or the way people in society or social relations in society are structured. So we associate the dominant understanding of scientific method and how it works and its ontological commitments to a world existing out there independent of the observer, which is a position characterized as realism and its epistemological dimension. Also, we associate this framework of realism and objectivism with positivist epistemology. So if reality exists independent of the observer, then all that is required of the method or method of inquiry is to discover that reality. So you will not be intervening, but you will be uncovering what remains latent, what remains hidden from our perceptions, what remains hidden from our understanding of how things work. So the next video we will try to unpack what is the positivist or dominant discourse around scientific method, and can it be problematized?